Any meaningful relationship takes time. But what you're saying is that it's important to be persistent.
Developing those relationships from end users to leadership to individuals in finance, continue to give to the people that have been supporting you all along.
Welcome to Business Talk with Eric Chau. In this episode number 8, you're about to get the inside scoop on government procurement from an expert that has over 2 decades of experience in government operations and public procurement. And today, we're honored to have Heather Calahan to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you know, of all the guests that we had on the show, Heather, I think you probably have traveled the farthest to be with us. Heather, thank you for flying in from Michigan. And I know that you've had a pretty distinct career on the government public side, and with the latest leadership role as the IT procurement director, right? And where your team really spearheaded one of the biggest or the largest procurement transformation initiative in the state of Michigan with over $60 billion in spend. So we are excited to hear from you and what it takes to win government contracts and the hearts and minds of the procurement officers.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to sharing my experiences with you.
So Heather, let's start with maybe you're giving us a little more detail about your experience, right, on the government side, and how it's pertained to helping the private sector, winning contracts with the government.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've worked for the state of Michigan for nearly 24 years. Worked in 5 different state departments. Procurement being one of them. Mm-hmm. That's where I spent a bulk of my time. In that role, I worked as part of a team and, as you mentioned, spearheading one of the largest procurement efforts in government operations in the United States. And so since working in the state of Michigan for 20 some years, throughout my period of time, I had planned on leaving state government at some point and starting a business of my own. I have 2 businesses. Last year in July, I departed state government and started 2 businesses, one being Calahan Law. I'm an attorney by trade, and Calahan Consulting. My Calahan Consulting firm, we focus around helping governments improve their procurement processes, but also helping private sector businesses who would like to do business with the state of with the states and local units of government. We help them develop a plan on how to respond to solicitations.
Awesome. You know, Heather, which is really one of the reasons why I was excited to have you on the show, because you have transitioned a very long, distinguished career on the corporate side, right, or public sector, to being your own boss, right? I think you have a lot of values you can add to the audience. Hopefully, we can learn a lot from you today. So before we dive into the untold secrets of the government procurement, okay, you guys stay tuned. Tell us how you actually. What was the process of you starting your own firm, and was it because of the good timing in your life, or is it something that you always wanted to do, and maybe some challenges along the way?
Yeah, so I have 2 kids, primary caretaker of 2 kids. I raised both of my kids on my own. The goal for a long time was to transition, as I mentioned, over into doing something for myself. My oldest is 26 years old, right out of college.
He's an entrepreneur too, right?
He is, yeah.
Okay, well, that's a story for another day, right?
Yeah, so right out of college, he decided that he was going to start his own business, and I watched him and recognized the fact that I can do the same thing. And so that was a big part of me deciding to transition.
You got inspired by your children.
I was inspired by.
I can't wait. I'm a 5-year-old. Can't wait to get inspired by him.
I know you have to pick and choose the things that you're inspired by, but so yeah, I pulled the trigger, and I thought it would be harder. I remember the day, my last day of work, which was with the state, which was last year in July, the last day of July, and I thought that I would have a hard time after I left, or at least at that moment. And I turned in all of my items that they issued to me and walked away, not thinking twice about what the next step would look like.
Well, congratulations on that, Heather. I think, it's spending, they say for you to really, in fact, one of the guests we had on the show, he's a commercial litigation attorney, right? One of the things that he learned from his professor in law school was that a law graduate doesn't really know what area they wanted to practice until they're really in the field for 5 years. And the fact that you've done it for 2 decades, right? That will give you, I'm sure, a very strong perspective on what works and what doesn't work in your space, and translating that experience to something extremely valuable to the private sector. So that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now, this is the part that I think our audience is waiting for. Today, you are kind enough to be sharing with us the top 3 untold secrets of the Government Procurement Office. Okay, I'm sure there are more than 3, Heather, but due to constraint of our time, we can only have discussion on 3. But before we dive into it, I just want to give you give the audience a little more context. Is that with Heather being the IT procurement director, right? With her latest role, I mean the transformation was the biggest in the state history. I'm talking about state of Michigan, with over $60 billion, right, in spend, awarding over like 800 contracts. Can you share with us the first untold secret of government procurement?
Yeah, so the first secret, which it seems like it would be obvious, but it's really important to develop relationships with the personnel that you intend on purchasing, the personnel that you intend on buying your product. Oftentimes people think that they can't or should not reach out to government officials to have a conversation about their products, but it's one of the most important things.
What would you say about the most effective way to reach out to either the personnel on the leadership position or the end user, sort of,
Pick up the phone.
Oh, pick up the phone.
A lot of people these days like to email, but pick up the phone.
And their numbers are public information, right?
They're published. Okay. You can do a quick Google search and locate the individuals that you need to contact. Developing those relationships from end users to leadership to individuals in finance. If you're working in the IT space, contacting the IT personnel. Developing those relationships to gather information about what the needs are, where the gaps are at, really understanding the individuals and what they need. Developing the relationships for each different entity, whether it's finance or end users, you'll gain different information from each individual, which will help you later on when it's time to bid for various different reasons. But it's very important to develop relationships. Oftentimes, people think that they can't or should not call government officials. There's lobbyist firms and governmental affair firms that that is their role. And you don't need a government a lobbyist firm or a government affairs firm. You can do the work on your own, but it's very important that you're making contact with the all the different players in the government office.
Mhm. Well, just like, I mean, Heather, is it true? Just like any relationship, right? Any meaningful relationship takes time, right? And that's, I think in the business world, especially, right? Some people, they might try to reach out, try to initiate those contacts, and then nothing happened, right? And then they just give up, or they just say, "Oh, the government is this and that," right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is that it's important to be persistent, right? Because you are building a relationship. Now, what do you say, like with like government officials that you kind of build relationships with, but they have kind of moved on to a different role with, maybe to a different department and so forth? Like, how would you navigate around those relationships and make sure you stay in contact with, with the department that you're trying to win contracts with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And any pointers?
Yeah, most people want to help.
Mhm.
The government officials, they want to help, and they want your knowledge. Oftentimes, they're doing their day-to-day, and they don't have time to market research, and they do not have time to connect with the industry. It does happen, but
So meaning the officials, they're trying to gather intel as well on
Yes.
what's out there, what's the latest shiniest thing, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I'm sure that it is the same across many different organizations. But for example, at the state of Michigan, they have meetings. They schedule monthly meetings and have vendors come in and present information about their product that may be occurring in the organizations that you want to work in. And you just have to ask to be invited.
Okay. So when you call them, just ask them when the next meet and greet is.
Yes, yeah.
Man, the state of Michigan is going to get a lot of calls today. That's great. And you know what? I am a Michigan native, so that's my home. Well, my home now is here in New Jersey, but Michigan's always have a special place in my heart. And throughout the years, I have developed a lot of business relationship as well in the state, helping businesses in that area. And from my experience also dealing with the state governmental department, they are fairly friendly. Okay, not making any comparison. Okay, but they to your point, they are trying to help. Of course, there are parameters they have to stay within, but for the most part, if you have a problem, you need to address it. They will help you figure out the solution if you ask the right question.
Yeah, kind of to your point, there's a period of time that you cannot reach out to government officials.
Okay.
It's during when the bid is on the street, the RFP is on the street. Any other time is fair game. That's why it's really important to get in front of them before that RFP is out on the street.
Okay, this conversation is getting a little more interesting as we move on to secret number 2. So the first untold secret is build the relationship even before the RFP, correct?
Correct.
So the second secret you had shared with me during our prep call, that was total like newfound knowledge for me. All right. So please dive into the untold secret number 2 of government procurement for us, Heather.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's considered a dirty word, sole sourcing.
Sole sourcing. All right. So explain to us what that is.
And so in the government procurement space, generally speaking, competition is when the government is spending money, the public's money.
Yes.
There should be equal opportunity for all vendors to bid on work.
Yes.
That will result in the contract. And so, although sole sourcing is the the dirty word. There are still mechanisms that governments use to contract directly with vendors.
Share with us.
Yeah. So so they still call them solicitation methods. So there's this appearance that you are actually competitive. The first method is what's called an invitation to negotiate.
Invitation to negotiate. Okay.
Yes, and some agencies or departments may use a different terminology, but essentially what it is the government entity believes that there's only one vendor that can provide the good or service.
Okay.
And so they draft a document called an invitation to negotiate, and they publicly post that on the website, the entity's website, and advises the vendor community that they intend to award to a specific vendor.
Oh, so they are they are publicizing the fact that they will be doing business or accepting a bid or a contract.
Doing business. We'll develop a contract and execute a contract with a certain vendor.
ABC company, and then it's up to the public to do what?
And it's up to the public to respond and raise their hand stating that they can perform the good or service. Oh. And at that point, there's an evaluation by the government
committee
that evaluates whether that's the case or not, and makes a determination if the project needs to go out for bid for competitive solicitation. If there's no response, then the government executes the agreement with the vendor, the company.
What's the typical time frame for people to raise their hand?
It could be 7 days. It could be 5 days. Each organization, and some of this is developed based on law. There may be legislation that requires a certain time period, or there could be some general language that talks about competitive purchasing, in each organization then would define what that competitive purchasing looks like, and it may be this invitation to negotiate.
So typically, where are these invitation to negotiate are they posted on the vendor's procurement office website?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So if nobody raised their hand within 7 days or 5 days, then boom, congratulations.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what's key here is that if you're a vendor and you can convince,
build a relationship, going back to untold secret number one.
Convince the entity, the governmental entity, that you are the only person that can provide this good or service. You can essentially help the government circumvent that process and execute an agreement with you directly.
Okay. Yeah. And, I think in everything, there's always positive and negative, right? But I do definitely see the positive of this type of soul sourcing method, right? Where it's very efficient, right? Things can happen quicker, and time is money in business, right? And in terms of, especially when it comes to technology, right? It could change faster than you and I breathe, right? So having that ability to make decision quickly, right? On the government side, I think is a positive, and it's just up to small businesses or any vendors, suppliers, right, to take advantage of that.
Another method. Speaking of technology,
there's more.
Yeah, there's more. So another method is what's called a competitive proof of concept, and especially in the technology space, this is a fairly new way of doing business. But with a competitive proof of concept, the government can, in a similar way, post a document of some sort that says we need X, Y, Z, and we want to try you out. So
it comes with like a trial period.
It's a trial period. And so the solicitation part is short. The evaluation, the period of the evaluation could be 3 months, 6 months, a year. And then if the government likes the relationship, the product, what's been
Delivery.
developed,
Mhm.
then they are able to execute an agreement immediately at the end of that evaluation period, and so it's flipped around. It's the solicitation or the RFP or the rather proving that you can meet the requirements is actually done first, and by hands-on, and then later on the contract's executed. Where in most solicitations, you have the solicitation part, you have the contract, and then you have a vendor who comes in the IT space. Hopefully they can do the work. The government entity does try to do their due diligence to make sure that the vendor is qualified, but this way, if you're able to convince a government to do the competitive proof of concept, then you're able to get your foot in the door and not necessarily have to compete with other vendors.
Okay. So it's like the vendor providing their expertise and knowledge and intel to the government officials, telling them this is the product that your department needs. Give us a chance. Wow.
Yes.
So you're helping them design the RFP and the solicitation,
Yes.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So like, are there more? Are
Yes.
there more methods of
Yeah.
I mean,
And so
okay, share one more. One more before.
Okay.
Number
Another method is, and oftentimes this is designed by law, they're set-asides
Okay.
for different types of organizations, such as veteran-owned organizations, small businesses, maybe a geographically disadvantaged area where
sociologically disadvantaged.
Yeah.
population.
So
Yeah.
So those opportunities often come without a requirement to
Okay.
even go out for bid, or if there is one, the government may only go to 2 vendors or 3 vendors within the community and offer a government contract. In the state of Michigan, the value of those contracts could be up to $500,000. So it's pretty substantial, especially if you're looking to prove your company to the state, because oftentimes the government is looking for experience. And so this is the way that you could provide and develop some of that experience. So then when the larger contracts, the larger solicitations are on the street, they have an opportunity to compete with the other vendors.
The government using the sole sourcing method, right? What percentage of the entire procurement? Like, is it 10%, 20%? Just ballpark figure. I'm just curious.
Yeah, for the set-asides, it happens more in those areas. For the larger projects, not as much.
Because I want to help the audience really figure out, like, help to understand what the potential is, what the opportunities could be, and maybe how much they're missing out, really.
Yeah. For those sort of things, it doesn't happen as often as what you see with the normal solicitations.
You talk about the invitation
To negotiate
and
competitive proof of concept.
okay.
It's not as common. It is more common in the IT space, though. So if you're selling a commodity or a service, more likely you'll see those go through the RFP process. But if it's in the IT space, it's more common.
I can understand why.
Yeah.
Right. With things changing fast, right?
Yes.
And the government is really relying on the vendors to provide them with the latest, intel, right? Thank you for sharing that. Woo. I know this is from my experience, or even maybe talking with some of the vendors, right? When the procurement office sends out the RFP, right, to everybody, right, and the vendors, suppliers, they get all excited. They put on their best makeup, put together the best capability statement or summary, right, so that they can look as polished as possible, right? kind of as their sales pitch. But you were telling me during our prep call that is wrong. Okay, so Heather, can you share with the audience what is the untold secret number 3 of government procurement?
Well, you mentioned the sales pitch, and that's exactly that's what I want to talk about right now. Is that it's not the time for the sales pitch. So
RP is not the time for sales pitch, and the sales pitch really happens when?
During the relationship building. It starts early on in the process.
Way before.
Way before.
Okay.
And and just to give some idea, a group that's developing the RFP could be developing that RFP for a year. It could be 2 months. It could be in development for a year. So most of the time, the government is replacing existing systems in the IT space. And then for commodities and services, typically it's they're going out for bid for products that they just need to provide competition again. So every so many years, then the contract goes back out for bid. But yeah, it's very important during the relationship stage that you're actually selling your product. You're convincing, you're taking time to have those individuals, the end users, finance, whoever it may be, to really understand your product, understand your company, understand how you bring value, or you will bring value to that agency. During the RFP process, it's all about technical requirements.
Okay.
Can you follow instructions to an RFP, and do you have the technical requirements to meet the bid? More common than not, and in every RFP, when the evaluation committee sits down and they're reviewing the vendor's proposals, every time there are vendors who submit proposals that do not meet the requirements. They submit
because they thought they had the best lipstick on, right?
Right, even incumbents.
They thought they are the
Yeah.
shiniest thing.
They don't answer questions. They
Yeah.
think that, well, we've worked with the government for some time. They know our performance, so they choose to not answer questions. But even for a new company that's trying to do business with the state, it's very important to follow all the directions in the RFP. Spend some time sharing information about your company, but that information's not scored. The RFP will identify the items within the proposals that will be scored. That's where you need to spend your time. Going back to what I was saying before about vendors submitting proposals about what they think is best for the state, instead of what the state or the local units of government are saying, this is what we want to do, and please provide us with information that supports our goals. The vendor community sometimes decides to present information that supports their goals. So it's really important to leave the sales pitch out. No need to talk about being best in class and that sort of thing. Oftentimes that part of the information is not read. The evaluator's reading the sections that are scored, and that's where the focus really should be. So spend time on the front end.
Got it.
Selling your product.
Thank you for that. And I hope, and I think this is extremely valuable information. For the new and old suppliers, I think. Just when you mentioned earlier that, don't assume that the government officials or the department that you're trying to win business with, they know who you are. They know what you can deliver. No, you gotta really dive into the RFP and look at the technical requirements. Can you address that during the RFP, right?
Right.
But really putting in the effort in the front end, right? Building the relationship, really presenting yourself, really who you are, right? Instead of what you do, right? Who you are as a company, who you are as a person, that will leave an impression on the minds of the official. Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna. Oh my gosh, we're halfway through. We gotta switch gear a little bit, if
Okay.
that's okay with you. I know starting your own business is not for the faint of heart. And you mentioned earlier that running your own consulting firm is the transition hasn't been as hard as you thought it was gonna be, which is surprising to me. Because starting a business is not the easiest thing. But maybe maybe you could share with us, right? What are what are some of the things that you do to bring some work-life balance, if there's such thing? And I always think of it as like, instead of balance, right? I always think of it as a kind of work-life integration, right? How we can integrate one part from one part to another,
Yeah.
to make it holistic and workable. So, and share with us.
Yeah, I've been asked this question, and so
You have never been asked that question?
well, I have. Yeah, I love working and helping people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to have that work-life balance at times. I was a single mom. I raised 2 kids. Divorced, unfortunately, during the first semester of law school. I 5 years in law school and worked full time at the same time raising my kids. And
Wow.
so,
Working full time, going to law school, and raising 2 children.
yeah,
Okay. How old were the kids at that time?
5 and 10.
Which require some attention.
Yeah. So I must have had some work-life balance, though I was sitting at the sporting events, usually doing homework. But I was
At a
there.
sporting event?
But I was there, and that's a big part of it, right? Attending your kids' sporting events. But no, back to the work-life balance, and I mean, I truly love helping people. I think that's my passion, is helping people solve problems and moving and transitioning into owning my own businesses. It's very different than working for the state. Couple things that I try to focus on, and one of them not as much, but I need to. But the first thing is really trying to find some time just to decompress. Maybe it's not that work-life balance, but finding time to get away from the paperwork, the computer, and spending some time doing something where I'm not thinking, because I'm reviewing contracts and paperwork.
Not doing anything that is particularly to your job.
Yes. Yeah.
Like flying out here to do this show with us.
Yeah.
A little bit out of the comfort zone, right?
Yes, it is. But I've picked up golf lately, or recently.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
And so I love
You
it.
should have told me earlier. We could have scheduled around.
Oh, we should have.
Mm-hmm. Next time, okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
When you come back on the next show.
Okay.
We're going to ask your partner about that, right?
I love playing golf.
Uh-huh.
Like, I love to go out there. I prefer to ride in the car, but I've been encouraged to walk around and push that cart a little bit. But it's helpful. I can get out there. I'm not thinking about work, and it really helps me decompress. And it's good to come back with a fresh. You have new ideas and new thoughts about how to solve problems and come to resolution on certain things. So I think it's really, that's one thing. I think it's really important to figure out how to decompress, find some time to decompress. And then another thing is the relationships. It goes back to what we were talking about before, but it's easy to get caught up in this day-to-day trying to take care of what's your responsibilities at work. But it's really important to not lose sight of the relationships that you have and nurture them and continue to give to the people that have been supporting you all along. So, yeah, work-life balance to me really is about focusing on those two things.
Yeah, I actually posted on my LinkedIn maybe last week, responding to another person's post about work-life balance. Okay, so like with the team here in K-Vibe, they're developing a new kind of a NFT platform called Sutudu, and there was a huge an event that happened a few weeks ago, and I was helping out with the event as well, and it was happening at the American Dream Mall, which is like the biggest mall in New Jersey. So instead of just me going there just to help out, right, and it was on a Saturday on the weekend, right, where usually our family is pretty busy during the weekend, have different stuff going on, and I invited my wife to come along, brought out Chau. And over there, they had a Toys R Us train that goes around the mall, right? And I got a 5-year-old, right? So he loved that experience. He loved meeting the people I'm associated with. So that's kind of what I think of work-life integration. Where opportunities we can really have fun together, and really have the family see a different side of you.
Yeah.
And also have the people that you work with see a different side of you, vice versa. So that's what has worked for me so far. So
yeah, I like that. Mm-hmm. I like that.
Bring them along, right? So moving on to our next topic, which and I'm really encouraged by what I have seen in the landscape of women in business. I've seen an increasing number of women being in business for themselves, and I think part of the reason is the desire to have more flexibility in your work and life, and this reason my wife also started her own acupuncture clinic just recently, because she wanted to have more control and flexibility, for how we want to live our lives. So we're gonna kind of want to dive into that, and I think this is the statistics from SBA research back in 2021 that women actually own about 43% of all small businesses in United States, and which is total 14 million businesses that are woman-owned, and by definition, 51% or more, right, owned by women. So as a female entrepreneur, with a very successful, corporate or public sector background, what new opportunities do you really see today for women that were maybe not available maybe 10, I would say, 7 to 10 years ago, that you see today?
Mm-hmm. I guess I was really fortunate in the state environment when I worked for the state.
Okay.
They, as an organization,
I think State of Michigan should sponsor this show for you to say that.
I know, right? I feel like I started shortly after college. My first job was a corrections officer at the jail. I don't know what I was thinking, but
correction officer. That's interesting.
Yes, corrections officer, which I don't. I would never do that again. But it provided a lot of, and it gave me the initiative to go look for something else better suited for my needs. So I started with the state. I moved around 5 different state departments, and was every time I moved, it was for promotion. And so there was a lot of opportunity there for me. And I would not be as successful right now without all of those opportunities.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is like a 101 statement, but at the same time, I'm doing what I want to do today because of all of the opportunities that were provided to me in the state environment. So I'm very fortunate to have landed where I'm at right now. The whole women in business, I have a couple projects that I'm working on with my son.
Oh yeah. Well, share with us.
In the IT space. I don't know if I'm ready to share.
Well, don't give out the IP,
Yeah,
don't even mention the name. Tell us what it can do.
Yeah. So the two projects that I have and I'm trying to find some time to work on it.
In what sector or industry?
One of them is in the logistics, transportation industry.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And then the second one is as it relates to subscriptions, and it's in that industry.
Okay.
I
I have to sign an NDA, all right, before you disclose to me. But that's great. That's the startup by your son?
Yeah. Yeah. So he does. He has a couple companies himself. One, both of them are startups.
Okay.
But he has a team that does development. So we were able to get a deal on our development cost in order to build these two products that we have. But I'm hoping to use whatever advantage there might be out there about women-owned business, and as these two projects continue to grow. So, I'm hoping that the opportunity, being a woman, will help us in those areas as we move forward with those two projects.
Yeah. And just looking at at this, I guess, even state level, Michigan, right? I mean, currently it's led by a woman governor, right? Is it Gretchen?
Yes.
Yeah, and she seemed to be doing a decent job, right? Where people are seeing progress, and I think with that is just more. I think more opportunities for women-owned businesses, and I'm encouraged to see that because I'm a minority person myself. It is minority-owned business. We don't necessarily, I guess, speaking from a minority business owner standpoint, we're not looking for hand me down. We're just looking for a fair shake, right? If somebody else have the opportunity, allow us to have an opportunity. So amazing! I can't wait to see the big projects that you have talked about, and also I think I'm sure your clients will appreciate the kind of work that you are doing to really bridge the gap, right, from private to the public sector, and really make the process more efficient for them, because navigating that space hasn't been easy, and I'm glad that you are doing that work to help these small businesses. Really appreciate you. Before we end the show, okay, Heather, and this is a question that I ask every guest, right? Because I think it's not by chance that we meet, okay? In fact, we want to give a big shout out to Michael Blicker, our friend, who had introduced us. He's an automotive consultant himself, and a great friend, and I truly appreciate him introducing us. With that said, the people that you come across in the future you guys wouldn't meet by chance either. It's for a reason. And if somebody had, I don't know, bump into you at a Starbucks or at a local pub or something, right? Happy hour, and learn about you and learn about your work, and wanted to get your advice on how to start your own business, right? Especially as a woman entrepreneur. What is one or two advice that you can share with that person?
Well, the first one is more about not necessarily about how to, but when. And so if you're thinking about it, just do it. That's the first piece of advice that I have. I don't know that I waited.
I think on the call you said just jump.
Yeah, just jump. Just do it. I had, so it's been almost a year. There's been 2 periods of time. They were not full days where I thought, what did I do?
Uh-huh.
I
Like you were questioning.
Yeah,
Okay.
I left this very secure and good job. I was Deputy Commissioner of Compliance and Legal Affairs for Michigan Lottery. I made it. Like there was only a few levels above me at an agency, and so that being said, 2 moments where maybe they lasted a couple hours each. I have been very happy with leaving, transitioning over into starting my own business, and it's rewarding. It's not easy. It's hard. There's a lot of when you work for one business, your focus is that business. When you have several clients, you're prioritizing daily. You're working late at night.
So instead of having one boss, you have many bosses,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
And learning. It takes a while to learn when you are reporting to leadership. It takes a while to understand what leadership wants and how they want it and what their expectations are. And when you have a new client, it just takes a while. And so what may typically take you 1 hour to do something, it may take you 3 or 4.
Okay. It's like traveling with a child. Always double the time of travel when you're with a kid. Yep.
I think yesterday at the airport, there was a family with young kids, and it seems so far, so long ago.
But you remember those days
Yeah,
too, right?
I do, yeah.
So
But
more time than you thought in terms of dealing with clients and things like that.
Yeah, and but the reward outweighs the reward, and then the second thing is really I'm starting. I know this, but I'm really starting to really understand that I work alone right now. I say alone. I always have people around me, but it's really important to maintain or develop new relationships, collaborate with people in your field. When you're by yourself and you're working, doing the things that you know how to do and you know how to do well, you miss out on that daily collaboration when you're having a conversation with your coworker or even
Having a coffee at
leadership.
the by the water cooler type deal.
Yeah.
Conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and credit to you, Heather. I mean, talk about collaboration, right? I mean, reaching out to contacts, and I guess somehow you and our friend Michael connected, right, through whatever, and then somehow introduced to me. You were introduced to me, and now we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
And who knows what's next, right? State of Michigan might call us and say, "Hey, can we sponsor your show?" I wouldn't bank on that.
Well, Michael is great. I really do appreciate him for the same reasons that you've mentioned. But and there's others. Other people are out there and they want to help. Like it takes us back to the relationship building that we were talking about in the beginning. People want to help other people.
Yes,
They do.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
And so not only seek it, but just like be open to it, because people want to. I mean, and do it in return as well. But sometimes people are afraid to pick up the call. Like, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to put them out. They're busy anyways. People want to help.
Okay, great point. In fact, a business mentor used to had taught us this. There are two common themes when it comes to human. Number one is everybody wants a better life, Everybody. Doesn't matter where you are, where you came from. And the second thing is that people like helping people. People like helping people. So thank you for those pointers. And Heather, unfortunately, we have to come to a close. But it's been a wonderful time spent with you here. And I can't believe you dropped so many untold secrets. The sub-untold secrets, those are great. And best of luck on your new ventures. And hopefully one day, maybe we'll have you back on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
This has been great. I really appreciate it.
Heather, thank you so much again for your time. That's the wrap for episode 8. Remember to follow us on social and subscribe to our channel. We look forward to seeing you next time.